Let's get back to the basics around the coronavirus. And drug makers made big promises for coronavirus vaccines, and the moment of truth is almost here. According to the analytics company Airfinity, 3 companies may have data before a key FDA meeting in October. AstraZeneca will be the first company with results on a broad phase 3 trial. It has pledged up to 30 million doses to the UK government by the end of the month. Moderna and the BioNTech Pfizer collaboration are likely to follow. We're joined now by Rasmus Bech Hansen, who is the CEO of Airfinity. Very good to have you with us then, Rasmus. I wonder if you could give us the benefit of your expertise then, following day to day, minute by minute, the testing that's going on around these vaccines. Which of them looks most promising in terms of being ahead of the others in the timing of their trials, but also around effectiveness? Which makes you most excited?
Well, so thanks for having me here. Just taking a quick step back here. We have a team of science analysts that looks into the details of these trials to really get as accurate as forecast as possible for 2 things. First of all, when can we expect the interim readouts, and when can we expect the final results? So what you refer to on the October FDA deadline, that's really the interim data. That's the first time we look in the so-called black box and get an indication of will these vaccines actually work or not. But we have to wait for the final results, which interesting look to come out in kind of from mid-November until the end of December, when we expect the large J&J trial to have been finished. So I think really the important question to ask yourself here is, will the regulatory authorities in the US and elsewhere base their decision on these interim results, or will we have to wait for the final results to make that decision? I think that's really a key point when you look at the vaccine as it is now.
Are there, Rasmus, there was a tragic vaccine incident in the 70s in the U.S. When they thought a pandemic was coming, and then the vaccine they administered turned out to have more negative side effects than the actual disease in the first place. Can we be sure to avoid something like that this time? A vaccine attempt, a trial with very bad side effects?
So that is one of the big risks with vaccines, right? As you point out, and that's why I think one has to be cautious of doing emergency regulatory approval based on the interim data. Say there is a scenario where we look at this data and it's just extraordinary. They work really, really well. Then there might well be a case for saying, okay, they need an emergency approval. Let's go ahead. People are dying from the disease. Let's get the vaccines out. But I think more likely is that we'll have some in line with the expectations. And there, I would say there's a reason we have the full trials. And it will be a fairly small data point. If we look at the actual number of what's called endpoints, so how many people would have been prevented from getting the disease, that's really what these trials are setting out to prove, right? Then we're looking at numbers and the interim around like 50 to 60 cases. So that's quite a small number to base such an important decision on. And as you also point out, then there are the safety concerns. So not all of these safety issues might have been resolved in the interim readout, which is another reason why it might be good to wait for the final results and also for later trials down the line. So there will be some really, really important trade-offs the regulatory authorities have to make in the coming months. And it's going to be very interesting to follow.
Yeah, really interesting to follow the societal decisions, political decisions and the science. Rasmus, when it comes to the timescales here, we understand in the US that states have been put on alert to prepare for a vaccine that could come as early as November the 1st. Given what you've said about approvals, does that mean you'd have to approve a vaccine after the interim readouts to enable it to be ready by November 1st?
Yes, absolutely. That's from our data. That's the case. Yeah, that would be an interim readout, and the FDA meeting on the 22nd. I would expect that would be based on interim readouts, and that's why I said that this is really the key question.
And is there any precedent for that, Rasmus?
Yeah, yes. It's not unusual to do that. If you have a trial that is super successful, then it's quite often you would say, let's just go ahead. Let's not wait with that any longer. And it's one of the reasons why you do the interim readout. But most often you look at the data sets, it's not really conclusive enough. We need to complete the trial. So we'll have to wait and see what these interim readouts say before we can make a judgment on that. But it's not unprecedented to do that.
Are you concerned, Rasmus, that there will be big anti-vaccination, protests and really action in terms of this vaccine?
Well, so I think yes, that is one concern, but I think the other concern is also that seems like some people in the markets think that this vaccine will be a silver bullet and kind of end the pandemic, and I would just a word of caution for two reasons. So first of all, the efficacy of these vaccines, the goals also set by the FDA is 50%. That means that 50% who get the vaccine are still at the risk of getting the disease. So it won't eradicate the disease in any way. And the other word of caution is that from a production perspective, this is a real big challenge. We did a detailed forecast of when can we expect 1 billion vaccines to be ready, and we saw the numbers was like they would be end of 2021. And of course, 1 billion is not enough to solve the world's problems. We need more than that. So that's why we also need multiple vaccines, and that's also why a successful outcome of these interim and the final results will be a huge step in the right direction of ending the pandemic, but it won't be the silver bullet that ends it all.